Hello, I'm Donna Skell with Roaring Lambs Ministries, along with my co-host, Tiffany Ross. Welcome to A Time to Dream. We're brought to you by Roaring Lambs Ministries, which wants to help you effectively and confidently tell your story. Look us up on our website at roaringlambs.org to find out more information. But today I want to ask you a question. Have you ever thought, I'm a good person, I don't cheat, I haven't killed anybody, I haven't stolen anything, I might tell a little white lie now and then, surely I'm good enough to get into heaven? Well, believe it or not, many people think this way, as our guest did once. But today he shares with us the joyful truth, what it really means to know and experience God. And I'm so excited to introduce you to Charley Kilman today and listen to a little bit about Charley. I hope I can spit all this out. It's very impressive. Charley is the Senior Manager of Mechanical Systems, Military Programs, and a Drive System SME at Bell. That's Bell Helicopter.
Yes,
He has a BSME from Maryland and has been with Bell his entire career. He's worked as a designer, design lead, a research project lead, a chief and manager in the Drive System Design Group, and he's held positions as Director of Mechanical Systems, Director of Operations, and Director of Production Engineering and Repair Strategy Lead for Aftermarket Revenue Capture and Customer Satisfaction. Charley has publications and co-authorships in the Vertical Flight Society and Society of Aerospace Engineers. He has 4 patents, several pending patents, and a Textron Chairman's Award for Innovation among his career achievements. He serves on the Mechanical Engineering Visiting Committees of both University of Maryland and the University of Texas at Dallas. Charley and his wife Kathy live in North Richland Hills, where they're very involved in their church. They have 3 children and 2 grandchildren. So again, Charley, welcome to A Time to Dream. We're honored to have you on the
I want to meet
program.
this guy here. That sounded better than anybody I know.
You have a very impressive resume, and clearly you're a highly intelligent person. I'm fortunate if I can turn on the computer and get it to work. So let's go back to the beginning. Growing up, did your parents constantly stress the importance of school and study, or were you allowed to have some fun growing up?
That's funny. First off, thank you for having me, and I love listening to the testimonies and the stories on your website, and they're just fantastic, and every story has a connection to somebody somewhere, and that's just as powerful what's going on. So I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland. I had a great. We went to church every Sunday in a traditional church, and I had a great childhood. Did my parents drive me to study real hard? No, not really from that aspect, but both of my parents were World War II generation, the greatest generation people, and they went through the war, and neither of them actually graduated from a 4-year college, because after the war they just wanted to work and have a family. So they did stress that I was going to finish high school and I was going to go to college, and so that was just a given. Childhood, I had a great time. My parents loved me to death. I have an older brother and sister that are just great. They're brothers and sisters, but you know, they're just great. My childhood was riding my bike to the candy store and big Christmases and a ton of friends and playing a ton of sports, and what I thought was, and I would hope would be just kind of the growing up in America in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. It just was absolutely fantastic. They did take us to church every Sunday, and it was a respect for God for sure in the home. Just a lot of fun, a lot of great friends. I still know some of them.
Oh, wow. Well, Charley, hearing your childhood, it sounds like a Hallmark movie. It's just idyllic, and I'm a little jealous. Kidding. But it just sounds wonderful, and I'm so grateful you had that kind of childhood. And in fact, speaking of your parents taking you to church, it kind of sounds like even church kind of fit in that nice, tidy box.
It did. So when I grew up in this going to church every Sunday, and I've heard all the stories, never actually read or had a Bible. I might have had one on the shelf. I think my sister got me one at one time, but there was always a reverence, and there was always, it was very ceremonial. We would go on, obviously, the big holidays, Easter and Christmas, and it was a church that, they didn't have any kids' church or anything, so I sat there and would get pinched, and, Mom would want to leave, and those kind of things. But never really, at that time in my life, dug in. I could tell you that Jesus died for my sins. I have no idea how that works or why or what was going on. I could say all the things. I had heard the gospel stories, but I couldn't really explain them and apply them to my life or anything like that. I kind of, it was kind of culturalized. That's just what we did. We went to church, and so there was reverence. There was respectful. There was an opportunity to feel guilty all the time if you did something wrong, and that kind of thing. But I was, as I look back now, I didn't know then, I was kind of part of a system. I was kind of part of, I'm doing what everybody else is doing, and we're going to church, and I thought I was okay. I tried to be, the good kid, the good, young guy going to church every week, but I wasn't sure. There was always that, I did things wrong like every other kid did, and hide from my dad in case he found out, little things like that. And but I didn't understand. I wasn't really sure, so I was relying on like a system and kind of what I was taught. There wasn't really there was no real connection with who Jesus was or anything like that at the time. So I was culturalized into being a good kid. I'll say mostly moral and those kind of things, I'd feel bad if I stole some, but I tried not to, those kind of things.
Well, I think what you said is really the crux of a lot of problems and issues for people. They see God through the lens of religion. And if we do that, we'll always have that feeling of not measuring up. There's a lot of people that know who Jesus is, but they don't know him personally. They don't understand that there is a whole second step after knowing who Jesus is and beginning that personal relationship with him. I remember when I was first led to the Lord, the man that led me to the Lord, he asked me if I was a sinner. And I thought for a moment, and I said, "No, sir, I'm not." Because I really didn't even have a concept of what sin was. I hadn't done the big bad things.
Right.
And so I thought I was a pretty good person. And being a good person, I just thought that I'd automatically go to heaven. But that really isn't true. So keep telling us a little bit more about your life, maybe about what happened after you left home and were on your own a little bit.
Yeah, so let's take it to college. I think you nailed it. When I compared myself to others, I wasn't as bad as them, and so therefore I'm okay. Of course, there were I guess, when you watch a football game and somebody kicks a field goal, says John 3:3 or John 3:6, there were them, those crazy, those crazy people. But comparatively, I was a good person. So enter my time at the University of Maryland. There was a guy, his name was Tom. I remember him, but I don't remember his last name. But there was a big open area, and there were some steps along the street, and there were kids walking in every direction. He always got out there and preached. And he would, people were mean to him, but he always had a following of people sitting. So whenever I walked by, I would just listen. I kind of knew the stories he was talking about, and people would argue with him, but there was something, and if Tom ever hears this, thank you, Tom. If he started a seed in me. This guy's preaching about something, and I've heard all these stories, and I went to a pretty popular church, and without going into denominations or anything, and so I kind of thought I had, like you said, everything was right, and I knew. But when I heard him speak, I really didn't. So college started in the back of my head, having me thinking. I tell a story one time. Me and my friends were going down. We lived obviously right outside of DC, so we were going down to the bars and doing what college kids do, and we all got out of the car, and I knew what we were going to do wasn't going to be probably acceptable to God. Now I was doing anything wild and crazy, but it probably wasn't the right thing. And I remember my friends got out of the car, and I sat there, and I told God to turn his face so he didn't see what I was going to do. Now I'm going to tell you a story about that, because nobody ever has ever heard that. And I've shared it a couple times since then, but I'm going to tell you a story a little bit later about that, so it remind you if I don't forget.
Yes.
But here's the thing. I've always seen God move in my life yesterday. He's doing something right now we're figuring out, but when I look back at yesterday, I'm like, wow. So I'm a senior at Maryland. I'm trying to find a job, and on the 4th floor of the library is where you go sign in this notebook. We're talking 1985, so there was no internet. There was, we're signing in a notebook. Who are these companies that are coming? And as a senior, I can put a priority because I got to get a job by the end of the semester, so I can override anybody else, juniors, anybody else that's there non-graduating. So I went and looked at the notebook, and there wasn't anybody there I was interested in. I'd heard of Bell Helicopter. We've changed the name to Bell, but Bell Helicopter at the time. So I'm not going to interview with anybody. I walk down the hall, I open the double doors, I take one step, and the next step down, I stop. And I can think about it right now. I see it, and I stop, and I think to myself, and I giggle, and I say to myself, watch me end up working for them. And I walk back and sign up for Bell. I look back now, and that was God stopping me and directing my step. The cool thing is, God was moving in my life, and I hadn't become a born-again Christian yet. And it was gentle and soft and loving and kind. He wasn't hitting me in the head with a hammer and yelling at me like you kind of have this maybe perception of God. Our perception of God when we don't know Him is what movies and TV shows. So that was a very, very powerful moment. Then I came to Texas, and we leave that a little bit. But what do I do at Bell? I sit next to what has become my best friend. His name is Zach. Dyed-in-the-wool, very smart, born-again Christian. Okay, seriously, really? That's what you sit me next to? So then the career and everything at Bell started about that.
My goodness. So here's Zach. He's a born-again Christian. God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? And were you put off at first by knowing that he was this born again? Did he seem like a loony to you, or how did that come about?
That's a great question, because you get that born again, John 3:16 everywhere you go, and actually he wasn't. Hope I don't cry. He was so kind. First off, he was an engineer, so he was, like me, kind of. But he was so kind, and he would just talk with me. One time I asked him, Zach, do you think I'm going to hell? And he just wouldn't answer it. I know what he thought, but he just wouldn't answer it. And he was always so kind and so friendly. He just opened up. He actually became my best friend for a very, very long time, and ended up being the pastor of our little local church. He and I grew up in that church together. But he invited me one time to his church. It was South Fort Worth. This little rented white building on the corner of College and Fogg. And I walked in there out of this reverent traditional church I grew up in and was still going to here in Texas. And there's an entire orchestra of people playing guitar, drums, and bass. There's an overhead going up on the thing. The guy in front of me is sitting in the chair playing a ukulele. People raising their hands and clapping. I had no idea what was going on, but there was an attraction. The pastor that morning spoke on reaping and sowing. I had never had anybody open up a scripture and explain it to me so I could leave that day and apply it to my life. And all of this time, this is a couple of years, been 2 years in Texas, there was that stirring from that seat of that guy at Maryland to my foot turning to coming down to sit next to Zach to the conversation. The Lord was just slowly, just turning my heart, and the attraction was fantastic. Want me to talk about the moment?
Yes.
Okay. So it's funny. In my head, being a born-again Christian and getting saved and all those religious words, I really didn't know what they meant.
Yeah.
I had to give stuff up. That's what I saw. I saw people who didn't drink. Now, I didn't really drink much, but you want to go out and have a beer after work with your friends or the softball guys. I never smoked. I didn't take drugs, any of that. But everything about the Christian life that I saw, I had to give up. The movies I watched, the TV shows I watched, what I did, and I was like, I don't want to give all that up. It was a devil telling me, don't do that, because you have to give all this up. You're gonna sit in your little shirt buttoned up to the top, and by your chair, and all these things we think. And so I actually went to my church, and I remember kneeling and said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm going to do it. And no, I'm not. And then I went to their little storefront church, and I gave my heart to the Lord, and it is amazing. it is amazing how everything changes. In an instant, the desire. So I didn't have to give anything up. I didn't want to do that stuff anymore. I didn't give anything up. I opened up to life. I mean, it's just amazing what happens when the Lord steps in. Now, I still don't know anything. I'm brand new, but it's just a completely changed perspective.
So what does it mean to give your heart to the Lord? For someone who may be listening that this all sounds so good, what do you mean by giving your heart to the Lord?
Yeah. So for me, what that was is I am going to do what somebody has been talking to me about. I'm going to accept the sacrifice of Jesus for the forgiveness of my sins. I'm not sure I really absorbed all that at the moment.
Right.
You know, I can say those. And I'm going to start to pursue who God is. I'm going to start not worrying about what all the things I wanted. As the years go on, and I've been a Christian for 33 years, the selfishness that he's worked out of me, and the arrogance, and all these other things. I used to introduce myself that I was an engineer. What a stupid, prideful thing to say. You know, and I used to carry at work, you know, if somebody introduced me, well, I'm, you know, this at Bell, but it's not who I am. So there was a lot of things the Lord works out of you, but that moment of saying, I accept Jesus, means I am going to just start pursuing God and what he has and says. I don't know what it is, but I'm trusting it. I totally stepped out and trusted it. I didn't know what the Bible said. I'm going to read it and study it, but I'm going to trust it. And it was just a flip. My entire perspective, attitude, outlook, everything changes. Everything changes. Now, you know, it took me 2 years to get saved, you know, all that time, and so there's a working out of salvation, what that means up to today for 30 years. But at that moment, and I was excited about life. I was working with a company outside of Bell, trying to get rich as I could as quick as possible and doing everything, and that all stopped because perspective and everything changes. Now, God's still taking care of me all these years, and somehow I can still eat and tell.
Well, I love what you said. It's a choice. It's a choice that you make to choose to invite God to be in control of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And he always does it so much better than we can do it, doesn't he?
My preconceived notion of who God was, an old man with a long white beard sitting in a chair, I'm afraid of him because I'm in trouble and everything I've done in trouble, and that is, I mean, if anybody listening could just, whatever you think about God, stop. Let him show you who he is. Read the Bible, pray, and get to physically, spiritually know him. And just stop all that preconceived notion. What a difference.
Yes.
Charlie, you'd mentioned earlier that story where you were going to go out and do something and you said, God, you know, turn your face, and you wanted to bring it back to another story. Could you tell us about that?
So let me tell you how God just directs your path. At that moment, I remember turning my head and saying, Lord, just don't watch what we're about to do. We just were going to the bars and trying to find girls. I never had a one-night stand and take anybody home, but you know, we're just crazy college boys. But I knew that moral thing, I knew what to do right. So fast forward, maybe 6-7 years at our little local church. I went before presbytery. That's where people with prophetic gifts kind of lay hands on you and speak over your life and, you know, kind of tell you things that confirm what's in you. And the prophetic ministry is a whole other radio show, I guess. But one of the people looked at me and said, I'm going to cry. Hold on. And she's speaking. It was a lady. She was speaking. It was God speaking. And she said, there was a time you told me to turn my head and not look, but I was there with, and I heard that, and nobody had, my friends were out of the car. Nobody on the planet had ever known that I had done that. And here it was, years later, God confirming to me that he was moving in my life in this crazy little thing, and he saw it, and he was there the whole time.
Wow.
Okay, is there a God, and is he real? Oh, come on. Come on. It's just a small little thing. Then there's going to be big, powerful miracles and windstorms. It's the small little things that just are so powerful. So when she said that, I'm like, nobody knows that. Nobody. It's like what you do in your closet. God says, I was there with you. Wait a minute. You know, that was just powerful. I don't do anything in my closet.
Okay, well, on the heels of that, Charlie, you know, that does make me cry, because knowing that Jesus took upon himself all of the sin. He saw it all. He did not turn his face. And we love because he first loved us, right? When we were sinners. So for me, I don't know about you, but when I need, even as a believer, when I need a reset, when I feel like my heart is not right, I think about all he has forgiven me.
Yes.
And it's like a clean slate with others. I don't hold grudges. So when we understand that forgiveness, we can extend it to others. And I believe there's a story, if you could share with us briefly, just about forgiveness and how powerful that is.
In Corinthians, it talks about we're not ignorant of the devil's devices about unforgiveness. Real quick story, I bought my first house in North Richland Hills. It was on a cul-de-sac, had a big, beautiful yard. I did all the things a young guy was doing, was mowing it and fertilizing and keeping it beautiful green. And my neighbor behind me, there was a couple of houses that backed up. It was up railroad ties a little bit, and he was putting in a pool, or redoing the patio around his pool. But in the midst of that, there was like 15 wheelbarrows of dirt, and he opened up that fence and put that dirt in my backyard. So there is a pile of dirt, half the height of me, 6 feet in diameter, on my gorgeous grass and all that. I was still young and selfish, and I was livid. He and I had some words over the fence. I was a saved Christian at the time, a couple of years. But boy, did he and I have words over his fence, and he was belligerent. He had been drinking, and he told me, he said, well, don't you know that, if I can say whatever comes out of the back of a person crap, don't you know that flows downhill? Okay, now we're going to fight. We didn't, but I was livid. So I will tell you, he did get the dirt clean. He had the workers going, but I was livid. And I remember I was so mad one night, I got up at midnight and just took a walk. I was just so mad. And I called the city, what can I do? One night I got in bed, and a lady came to our church and spoke about this. And I said to the Lord, I said, okay, I know I'm allowed to be concerned about the situation, if there's a legal thing or, what do you do? But my anger towards this man, I know is wrong and I can't handle it. Would you take it away from me? Okay, this is silly, but it's gone. So I sat there in bed and I'm like, you're kidding. Because I just wasn't mad at him anymore. Now, you know how you have a bitterness or unforgiveness or anger in you is, if you think about it, it still stirs you up. If you think about what that person did to you in high school or something, it still makes you mad. That's still in you. So I sat there in bed that night at midnight and I started talking to myself, he put dirt in your yard. He said stuff flows down. And I started telling myself to make myself mad, and I couldn't. And the unforgiveness was so freeing. That nugget was gone out of me. I'm like, just like that. It wasn't any big prayer, it wasn't on my knees and all. It was just, Lord, this is too much. I can't handle it. And he took it. Cast your cares upon him. He takes all of our sins. 2 days later, the guy cleaned everything up. He apologized over the fence. We became friends for about a year or so. He moved away. I mean, just unforgiveness is such a powerful thing for us to be destroyed by, but it is so easy to let go. And it's Jesus let go. I couldn't have done that. It's just so powerful how we can just step right in. Just a little prayer.
It's so true. Unforgiveness can be like a weight around your neck.
Oh, it's horrible.
Or it could be like a little seed inside you. You forget it's there, you don't even recognize it's there, but it's growing and it's doing harm to the rest of you.
It's
and
bitter.
when you can get rid of it, God does that.
Oh,
He can
so
just take it away.
I've carried that piece as an early Christian all my life. So the unforgiveness thing, I learned that early. And so when something makes me mad, I can go say, Lord, I understand it. And it goes till those don't hold on to me. I mean, it's a lesson I learned. It was a good one. It was a good one.
Charley, you have been walking with the Lord now for several years, and I know you and your wife teach Bible studies and all that. And as we're winding down here, would you share with our listeners just some final thoughts, things that you really want them to take away with today?
Yeah. What I have learned and seen in my life is the little things in life that can pile on you, just like that unforgiveness story and the 10 other things and the promotion you didn't get or what that person said or a hurt relationship, and they layer on us. And then you throw in media and billboards and the culturalization of dumbing us down to sin. They layer on us and we think we're okay. When you accept the Lord and you walk with the Lord, I can say today, this is what I did with Pop Talk, is I live in constant peace. place. I can really say that. And when you stand on all of the promises, there's 7,000 something promises, when you stand on all of them, life just works. A relationship with the Lord, not the learning, studying, but you and the Lord sitting and talking and just whatever's on your mind, life just works. Everything works. It rains on me like it rains on everybody else, but life just works. It is full, it is freeing. If you want to be really free, you come under submission of the Lord, and there is total freedom. It is the most, in today's, right now, don't say forget, but forget we're going to heaven. In today's moment right now, it is so life-giving, it is so free, it's so obvious. Why wouldn't somebody want to know who God is? Forget what you think about God. If He created all this and He really is God, or why wouldn't you want to know Him? You want to know the president, you want to know the CEO of the company, you want to know the football star. Why wouldn't you want to know God? And He's right here.
And I think there are people listening that want to know God, and right where you are. You don't need any fancy prayer, you don't need any special words. You can just ask God to come into your life and reveal Himself to you. And we would be so excited. Thank you so much for sharing today on A Time to Dream, Charlie. Now, if they want to get in touch with you directly, would you give your email address?
Yeah, I have an email address just for that. It's CJK, which are my initials, CJK and the word life, L-I-F-E, CJKlife@outlook.com. It's just that simple.
So we encourage you to contact Charlie if he had an impact on your life today, and we'd love to hear from you as well. We're at atimetodream@gmail.com. You can email us your prayer request, or maybe you have a story that you'd like to share with others. We'd love to have you as a guest on A Time to Dream. So for Tiffany Ross, I'm Donna Skell of Roaring Lambs Ministries. We pray that you have a great day, a great week, and stay blessed.